The One Piece manga just dropped an absolute bombshell by revealing the true origin of devil fruits that no one expected. In fact, Oda might just have broken the fourth wall and written himself into the story. And because it's gonna be really important to discuss this, I want to give you the literal translation of what Dr. Vegapunk tells the Straw Hats in the original Japanese version. Because when he sees Gear 5 and realizes that Luffy's devil fruit takes the form of the god Nika, he says this. You have probably not heard the name Nika before, because it's a name that was erased from history. However, as long as people keep wishing for him, he can never be erased. Everything is born into this world after it was wished for. And the same goes for devil fruits. People go like, if things only were like this, or if only that thing happened. So devil fruits are powers of a wide range of wishes for humanity's future. And therefore, these artificial fruits are hated by the mother of nature, which is the sea. That is my personal hypothesis. I'm not even thinking about whether there are gods or not. Isn't that fascinating? So, devil fruit users are actually beings created from someone's imagination that lived in a different dimension. Yes, Vegapunk, well, that is pretty fascinating. Holy Usopp. This is by far the biggest lore drop that we've ever had about devil fruits in the entire story. Really something that we've been waiting for ever since the beginning of Luffy's adventure. There is so much that we need to talk about here because this answers a ton of questions we had, but at the same time, as One Piece often does, raises even more new questions as well. Okay, devil fruits are actually beings created by someone's imagination living in another dimension. Oda, did you just write yourself into the story? We need to discuss this. However, the first thing, before we can even get into the meats and potatoes of this, that we need to address here is the big caveat that Vegapunk gives us here. Because all this information that he just dumped on us is his own personal hypothesis. In other words, Vegapunk himself has deduced this much from all his research and the research made by the archaeologists on Ohara, but he does acknowledge himself that it's not confirmed to be the whole story. And so, knowing Oda, I believe that there is a lot of truth to what Vegapunk has just said here, but I'm also convinced there will be a few twists and turns to this explanation in the end as well. So take everything here with a bit of a grain of salt. But with that being said, let's go through everything that we've gotten here because it's a lot. Basically, Vegapunk's hypothesis states that devil fruits are created from people's imagination and wishes for the future. And as long as people keep wishing for these things to happen, they will become reality in the world of One Piece. Now, his example here is actually Luffy's Nika devil fruit. Now, Vegapunk actually didn't seem to know that this particular devil fruit existed in the first place. He does look up the Gomu Gomu no Mi in the ancient devil fruit encyclopedia. Yes, that's a thing too, apparently, that we'll have to talk about at some point as well. And he does realize that there never was a Gomu Gomu no Mi. However, apparently Vegapunk has either seen an actual image of the sun god Nika or heard a description of its appearance, because he correctly identifies that Luffy's Gear 5 is Nika based on some ancient text that he references. Once again, I do have to wonder whether all these ancient things that Vegapunk references are all dating back to the Void Century and to Joy Boy's time, or if all of this goes back even further than we all imagined. After all, the Void Century happened only 800 years ago, while the One Piece history itself dates back at least several thousand years. And then in this context, there's of course also the entire Luffy versus Lucci thing, and Lucci's awakened devil fruit having the same steam coat around his body as Luffy and Yamato. In general, this chapter answers a bunch of questions we had about Devil Fruit Awakening and how it works, I think. And especially with all the new information that we've gotten, there is a lot that we can deduce, especially about Zone Devil Fruits. And I really want to discuss all of that in detail. So how about this? I will make a dedicated video about just that will be out within a week, if at least 1,000 people subscribe until tomorrow. Anyways, Vegapunk basically says that even though Nika's name and the true name of Luffy's Devil Fruit were erased from history by the world government, the powers of Sun God Nika will never cease to be as long as people believe in his existence. Now, as we know from Who's Who small history lesson, Nika is a deity that's worshipped by slaves as the warrior of liberation. In other words, Nika would be the literal embodiment of people's wish for freedom, which of course fits in perfectly with the main theme of One Piece and what Luffy in general represents as a character: freedom. Another thing that is really interesting is that it turns out that Blackbeard was actually being quite literal when he said that dreams never die. He actually wasn't being all that philosophical at all. He knows that people's dreams literally never die, as they're gonna be reborn as devil fruits as long as people believe in them. In the end, it turns out that this sentence too was a major piece of foreshadowing that Blackbeard had knowledge about devil fruits that no one else had. Now, this is pure speculation, but it might be the case that this is the key to Blackbeard's ability to steal devil fruits as well. I mean, maybe the darkness fruit is the strongest devil fruit in his eyes, because if there is darkness, there can be no other dreams while you sleep. Maybe exactly how this devil fruit can cancel out other devil fruit powers and why Blackbeard never sleeps as well. I've previously also talked at length about the fact that devil fruits might well be related to inherited will. Inherited will in One Piece basically describes handing down one's own wishes and dreams to another person, which means that the countless examples of devil fruits apparently changing people's personality might well be due to the will of previous owners being stored inside them. For example, Big Mom becoming a lot more like Mother Caramel, or Sabo becoming a lot more like Ace. And all of this also seems to be connected to the so-called lineage factor that was discovered also by Dr. Vegapunk that seems to be essential to the functioning of devil fruits. Inherited will, lineage factor. And now all of this, of course, gives extra special meaning to Roger's final words at his execution. Inherited will, the winding of the ages, and the dreams of people. As long as people continue to pursue the meaning of freedom, these things will never cease to be. Well, if what Vegapunk says is true, then this might be Roger describing the secret of devil fruits in the very first chapter of One Piece. People dreaming of a better future and passing those dreams on to others, which then again literally keeps devil fruits in circulation across the ages. And the winding of the ages itself might refer to the wide variety of futures of humanity that people wish for, that Vegapunk talks about as well. And really everything that's being said in this chapter fits in perfectly with what both Blackbeard and Roger have said. Only that dreams have a much more literal power in the world than we all thought. Now, the reason that I said that no one expected this reveal at the beginning of this video is not because I believe that no one ever had the idea that devil fruits might possibly be based on people's dreams. In fact, you probably thought to yourself, what do you mean unexpected? I thought of that ages ago. And in fact, I myself made a video over half a year ago talking about exactly that possibility, that devil fruits might be created from human imagination. But the reason that I found this reveal so incredibly unexpected at this point in the story was because so far, Egghead Island had basically one big message for us. And that is, everything in One Piece that looks like magic actually is ancient lost technology. Basically, the idea that I've been getting from Vegapunk so far is that everything that's strange in One Piece can be explained by a technologically super advanced civilization that tapped into an unlimited energy source that then allowed them to basically do anything. I mean, we do know that Vegapunk was able to create artificial devil fruits using science, and it fits in very nicely with the idea that all of this is just super advanced biotechnology. And now, suddenly, the main science guy himself of the story tells us that actually, if you just wish for something hard enough, it will come true in this world? I mean, I'm not sure about you, but to me that just feels incredibly paradoxical. Which one is it now? Are devil fruits and haki magic? Or is it science? And Vegapunk himself actually addresses this question too. Remember, he said that he doesn't really care whether this is the work of gods or a god. Which in other words means that he actually doesn't know how wishes and dreams actually become reality. Which, you know, sounds a little bit fishy to me. Don't you think that the man who wants to know anything about the world and ancient powers and wants to advance science would not want to find out how they worked and where they came from in the first place? A little bit fishy. I think either Vegapunk is salty that he couldn't figure it out by himself, or he is actively withholding some important information here. After all, in order to create an artificial functioning devil fruit in a lab, he clearly must have at least some scientific understanding of these fruits. For example, Momo's perfect devil fruit was created by using Kaido's lineage factor, basically the equivalent of DNA in the One Piece world. So not exactly magic, right? Also, Vegapunk contradicts himself a little bit in his speech when it comes to this point as well. He talks about how the sea, which is apparently the mother of nature, how this sea hates these artificially created things. And the two Japanese words that Oda uses here are shizen and fujisen, which basically means nature or natural and unnatural or artificial. So basically, he openly describes these manifested powers as artificial creations. So which one is it, Vegapunk? My best guess right now would be that someone actually had the advanced technology or the supernatural magic power to create this mechanism in the One Piece world at some point in the ancient past. And the key to that is Vegapunk's most interesting statement of all here. 能力者とは誰かが思い描いたいくつも異次元の生きる者たち. Which, first of all, is such a strangely phrased sentence. Just for confirmation, I actually asked some of my Japanese friends to help me translate it, and everyone kind of said something different here, but here is the gist. Ability users are people who live in many different dimensions that someone envisioned. Ijigen literally means different dimensions without any doubt, so this already is a big deal one way or another. We're talking about different dimensions in the One Piece world. But it seems like Oda is keeping this a little bit vague on purpose here, and this could mean so many things. Is it the actual fruit users themselves who live in a different dimension? Because to me, it does seem that they very much live right here, right now in the One Piece world. Or is it that those different dimensions are created by someone and that devil fruit users can access them and their beings to use those powers? Or does it mean that there are people from another dimension who envision a certain ability and then that ability materializes in the One Piece world? Which would basically mean that Oda imagining these powers in our dimension, in our reality, makes them a reality in One Piece. So Oda saying that for him, One Piece is a real world and that Vegapunk is actually aware of the fact that our real world exists? Which honestly would be the most meta Rick and Morty twist that Oda could possibly pull off on us. Honestly, these reveals are just getting crazier and crazier, and in case you missed my thoughts on last week's chapter, make sure to check that one out right here.